Right then, here we are at long last, back with the Polikarpov I-15. This episode we'll be going over the aircraft's technical details. If you're here for the history, then fear not. That video is already out and elsewhere on this channel. If you were looking forward to the battle, however, I'm afraid you're out of luck, because that particular video hasn't been made yet. Anywho, let's get into our heavy denim boiler suits, grab a spanner and smear our faces with an oily rag as we meticulously take apart the technical details of the Polikarpov I-15. In War Thunder, the Polikarpov I-15 is a Rank 1 Battle Rating 1.0 reserve fighter aircraft. There are three different variants: the I-15 M-22, the I-15R, and the I-15WR. Like I said in the history video, the I-15 BIS and the I-153 will each be getting their own videos. The I-15 is a single-engined biplane with a crew of one, the pilot, who sits a little aft of the lower wing's trailing edge. He is protected by an 8mm thick steel plate directly behind him that covers his entire body, including his head. This makes the Polikarpov I-15 a little more resistant to attack from directly behind than perhaps some of its contemporaries. The wing configuration is that of a single bay, wire-braced, forward-staggered sesquiplane, the upper wing of which is gulled, attaching directly to the top of the fuselage just in front of the cockpit. A single aerodynamically-faired wooden bracing strut separates the upper and lower wing on each side, with the starboard strut featuring a pitot head. Two bracing wires are strung between the fuselage and the bracing strut in an X, joined at the intersect by a teardrop-shaped wooden connector. An additional pair of bracing wires are connected in parallel from the top of the landing legs to just before the front of the bracing strut on the underside of the upper wing. The I-15, having a Gull-Type upper wing, has no central bracing struts. The wings consist of a wooden frame covered in fabric. The fuselage of the I-15 is made from a steel frame covered by Duralumin at the front and fabric at the rear. The tail assembly is conventional, being constructed in the same way as the wings. The tailplane is supported by a pair of wooden struts on each side. The landing gear is of the tailwheel configuration, featuring a steel-tipped wooden tailskid and a pair of disc mainwheels attached via fixed gear legs to the fuselage just forward of the lower wings. On the I-15WR, the main wheels are covered by aerodynamic fairings. The power plant of the Polikarpov I-15 M-22 consists of a single frontally mounted Shvetsov M-22 9-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engine, providing up to 570 horsepower or 419 kilowatts. The M-22 is essentially an unlicensed copy of the Bristol Jupiter engine from Britain. In War Thunder, however, it is labelled as a Gnome-Rhone M-22, which is incorrect. Although the French company Gnome-Rhone did manufacture the Bristol Jupiter as the Gnome-Rhone 9A Jupiter, there is no evidence that any of these made their way to the Soviet Union. The engine turns a single two-bladed semi-adjustable Duralumin tractor propeller. I say semi-adjustable because it had to be adjusted by hand on the ground. The engine is fired up using a starter cartridge, or can be hand-started by a hapless ground crewsman. Alternatively, a vehicle akin to a Huck starter can be used, which is why the spinner has those notches in it. The engine is surrounded by a town-end ring type cowling. All this allows the I-15 M-22 to reach a maximum speed of 368 km per hour at 3,000 meters, or 229 miles per hour at 10,000 feet, and a ceiling of 9,200 meters, or 30,200 feet, although I of course have not tested this myself. This would take forever. The I-15WR is fitted with the improved Shvetsov M-25 9-cylinder air-cooled radial piston engine, which was a license-produced version of the American Wright R-1820 Cyclone, and produced 630 horsepower or 463 kilowatts. In War Thunder, however, this doesn't seem to have granted the I-15WR with any improvement in speed or maximum height. The Polikarpov I-15R is similarly fitted with a Shvetsov M-25, however in War Thunder it is labelled as a Gnome-Rhone M-22, like that on the I-15 M-22, despite also stating that it produces the 630 horsepower of the M-25. Despite all these aircraft's claims of speeds of 368 km per hour, in my tests I have found that all these I-15s max out at around 320 to 25 km per hour, or 199 miles per hour, at 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet respectively, at which point the engine will start cooking and high rev warnings will begin to pop up sporadically. None of these engines feature any kind of wartime emergency power capability either. Maximum structural speed is around 550 to 600 km per hour, or 350 to 400 miles per hour. Even diving straight down from 3,000 meters I was unable to reach this speed, however, so I wouldn't worry too much about your wings falling off from excessive speed in this particular aircraft. All these engines weigh 330 kilograms or 728 pounds. The engine is carburetor fed, so watch those negative G maneuvers. Directly behind the engine is a small oil radiator, and above that is the oil reservoir. Taking up most of the space inside the forward fuselage is the fuel tank, containing up to 309 litres or 68 imperial gallons of fuel, giving the I-15 a maximum range of 530 kilometres or 329 miles, or up to 1 hour and 6 minutes of flying time. This tank is not self-sealing, however, so if it springs a leak, it's gonna stay leaking. The fuel and oil tanks are also completely unprotected, meaning that leaks and fires are relatively common. The Polikarpov I-15 features a pair of long ailerons on the upper wings, covering almost 3/4 of the wing's trailing edges. There are also a pair of elevators at the back, as well as a rudder to go with the single tail fin. The large size of these control surfaces make the Polikarpov I-15 an exceptionally manoeuvrable fighter, possibly the most manoeuvrable in the game, being able to complete a full 360-degree turn in roughly 8 seconds. Its large, broad wings and overall compact frame also give the I-15 a very short takeoff run, even without any flaps. There are no trim vanes, however, so it may be a little tiring to fly for a long time. Landing the I-15 is a little trickier due to said lack of flaps. However, the I-15's stall speed is only 90 km per hour, or 56 miles per hour. And even then it's the gentlest stall in the world, so I wouldn't worry about it very much. The only real challenge is making sure the plane doesn't nose over from overuse of the wheel brakes, so when landing, release the brakes a few times to make sure this doesn't happen. The armament of the Polikarpov I-15 consists of 4 fixed forward firing 7.62mm PV-1 machine guns mounted in the fuselage just aft of the fuel tank and firing between the cylinders of the engine. The PV-1 has the second lowest rate of fire of all rifle caliber aircraft mounted machine guns in the game, at 750 rounds per minute, second only to the 7.62mm DA machine gun, which can only be found mounted on the Tupolev TB-3, and has a rate of fire of only 600 RPM. This is a far cry from the infamous Shvetsov machine gun mounted to the I-15's successor, with its fire rate more than double that of the PV-1 at 1800 RPM. Each machine gun on the I-15 is fed from a 750 round belt for a total of 3000 rounds of ammunition. Said ammunition can be arranged in the following compositions: default belts with tracer, ball omni-purpose, armour-piercing incendiary and adjustment incendiary bullets in a T/B/B/AP-I/AI configuration, universal belts with tracer, armour-piercing incendiary, adjustment incendiary and armour-piercing incendiary tracer bullets in a T/AP-I/AI/API-T configuration, tracer belts consisting entirely of armour-piercing incendiary tracer bullets, and of course stealth belts with armour-piercing incendiary and adjustment incendiary bullets in an AP-I/AP-I/AP-I/AI configuration. Honestly, any of the 3 specialised belts work fine, so it's up to you to choose your preference. In regards to secondary armament, the Polikarpov I-15 can be fitted with a pair of DZ-40 underwing bomb racks, allowing it to carry 2 50kg or 110 pound FAB-50 bombs, each containing 24 kg or 53 pounds of TNT high explosive. Who knows, you might even hit something with it. The camouflage of the I-15 M-22 and the I-15 I-15WR consists of an overall dull green finish with a light grey underside, as well as a black engine cowling. The roundel of the Red Army Air Force, the Red Star, is painted on the upper surface of the upper wings towards the tips, the undersurface of the lower wings also towards the tips, in the middle of the rear fuselage and on the tail fin. The Polikarpov I-15R, however, is painted in parade livery, consisting of an overall white finish with a red rudder and engine cowling. The roundels are painted in the same places, except for the one on the tail fin, which is removed. Now let's take a little look at the cockpit. Forward visibility of the Polikarpov is, as the actual pilots who flew these aircraft complained, somewhat restricted by the gulled upper wings. While this does leave the forward upper quadrant of your field of view completely unobstructed, it does block the view you have of anything that might be to the left or right of your gun sight. This can make tracking targets difficult, as well as reducing your awareness of threats potentially flying almost directly at you. The gun sight itself is of the telescopic variety, which does nothing to improve the I-15's already restricted forward view, but you do also get the obligatory ring and bead gun sight stuck to the side, although you'll need to manually align yourself with it to use it. The windscreen consists of 4 regular glass panels, non-bulletproof, bolted together for a split windscreen design. The I-15's lack of a canopy provides a more or less unrestricted view of what's around you, barring that which is blocked by the wings, of course. The raised spine and wide headrest do limit rearward vision, however. There are also 2 small glass windows on the sides of the fuselage, one on either side of the instrument panel, which serve to illuminate the instruments during daylight. Nighttime illumination is provided by a small lamp under the right side. Now for the instrument panel. Thanks to a little help from Google Translate and a Russian alphabet keyboard website, I think I have managed to suss this thing out for the most part. Let's start with the middle panel. The top left dial is the oboroty, which means engine tachometer. Next is the compass. I cannot find a separate compass in the I-15, meaning that this one is either the magnetic compass, in which case it would hopefully have been altered to compensate for the aircraft's own magnetic field, or it is a gyroscopic direction indicator. If this is the case, the pilot has no way to adjust it in flight, meaning that it has to be aligned with a magnetic compass on the ground, after which point it will gradually fall out of alignment again, meaning that navigational accuracy of the Polikarpov I-15 slowly decreases the longer it is in the air. I suspect for this reason that it is a magnetic compass. Next along is the vysota, which means height. Therefore, this particular instrument is the altitude indicator, which, this being a Soviet aircraft, would be in meters. The middle left dial is the skorost, which means speed, telling us that this is the airspeed indicator. And, like with the altitude indicator, it is in good old metric kilometers per hour, because the Soviets were at least rational when it came to measuring stuff. Next along is the turn and slip indicator, represented in the quite common manner of a needle for the level of bank and a bubble measure for level of side slip. If the needle is pointing at 45, it means that your aircraft is currently banking at 45 degrees. Next along is a dial on which is inscribed Podyem and Spusk, which means climb and descent respectively, meaning that this particular instrument is the ascent/descent indicator. On the bottom left is an instrument with 3 separate readouts. The first is labelled Temperatura Masla, which means oil temperature. The 2 underneath share the label Davlenia Masla Benzina, which means pressure, oil and gasoline. Russians refer to aviation fuel as gasoline. The dial on the left, therefore, represents oil pressure, and the one on the right shows fuel pressure. Next along is quite clearly the chronometer, and after that is a dial labelled cylinder, which shows the cylinder head temperature of the engine in degrees centigrade. The dial located to the left of the main instrument panel is the magneto selector switch, and the instrument located to the right is labelled Naduv, meaning pressurization. This will be the manifold pressure indicator, and that big cocking handle above it will be the fuel cut-off valve. On the far left is an instrument mounted on its side, labelled Meslor, which means oil kilograms/centimeters, meaning that this instrument could display oil level. Okay, now that we've gotten all the instruments out of the way, let's move on to controls. Firstly, on either side and above the instrument panel, you can see the receiver of two of the aircraft's 4 PV-1 machine guns, making those two wooden handles the charging handles. If a machine gun became jammed, the pilot would pull one of those handles to cycle the action, thus clearing the jam. If the lower two machine guns become jammed, however, the pilot will have to make do with the two weapons he can access. The big lever on the right is, I reckon, the oil radiator shutter, which regulates airflow through the oil cooler. In winter, this would likely be closed to prevent the oil from becoming too viscous. The big black lever is the throttle, and the two yellow levers will be the mixture controls. The blue valve on the left, I think, controls the oxygen flow to the pilot. The oxygen bottle is tucked down next to the pilot on his right. The two red plungers just behind the oil level indicator I cannot for the life of me figure out. They seem to lead towards the oil radiator, however, so I'm going to say that they have something to do with the oil flow regulation. On the right is the starter gun, the cartridges for which are stowed on the pilot's right. The long plunger handle is the fuel primer, and the black box features switches and buttons for the various electrical devices this aircraft is equipped with, such as lights, the clock, and of course the main battery switch. Next to the electrical box, or fuse box, is a small first aid kit, and down there at the bottom are the seat adjustment handles. Tucked underneath the instrument panel are the obligatory rudder control pedals, and featured prominently in the centre is the flight control stick. Each individual machine gun has its own trigger, plus an additional trigger for bombs, hence the 5 triggers. The big lever on the top is likely the safety catch, and the two little red triggers probably control the wheel brakes. This cockpit is quite Spartan and utilitarian, which isn't surprising given the inherent simplicity of the Polikarpov I-15. There are no trim tabs, so therefore no trim controls. No cowl flaps, so no switch for that. Non-retractable undercarriage, no flaps, no engine boost, no fancy avionics, none of that nonsense. Just a simple biplane with the barest minimum of essential controls and instruments needed to keep an aircraft in the air. It's not even laid out all that badly, not like the mess that is the Fiat CR32. Visibility is, however, a bit of an issue thanks to the gulled upper wings. However, in all, I rate the cockpit of the Polikarpov I-15 a 6 out of 10. In terms of the aircraft itself, it is extremely manoeuvrable, making it quite difficult for energy-based fighters to hit it. Its armoured backrest makes instant pilot knockouts from behind rare, and its 4 machine gun armament is quite formidable for a reserve aircraft. Plus, the I-15's ability to carry bombs make it especially useful in ground battles. However, the I-15's engine is not particularly powerful, meaning that intercepting bombers is a challenge. The I-15 also has a tendency to lose a lot of energy when performing hard maneuvers, meaning that while it may have an advantage in terms of maneuverability at the start of a dogfight, if your opponent is clever, they will repeatedly swoop at you, forcing you to maneuver to avoid being shot, which bleeds your energy. This will continue until you're just about falling out of the sky, making you an easy target for faster fighters. In all, I give the Polikarpov an 8 out of 10. And that's it for this video. Tune in next time for some battles featuring the Polikarpov I-15. If that isn't your cup of tea, however, then I'll see you for the next subject of these videos, which will be the BT-5 light tank. However, it'll likely be a while before that next video comes along, for as I said earlier, or wrote in the description, I am going to university, and of course that must take precedent. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and thank you for sticking with this channel during its long hiatus. And hopefully I'll see you in future. Goodbye.